Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm Mass Musa, co-host with Eddie Conway. And to update you on Eddie Conway is getting better. Eddie Conway, hopefully at some point in time, will make a cameo appearance at the program that he started and at the news network that he loved. Today we have an extraordinary set of circumstances that a lot of people from different countries are being subjected to for no other reason than they're not nationalized citizens, but they are given the opportunity to come to this country to seek a better life. And because they come to this country, oftentimes because of the United States imperialist attitude towards the country they was from, results in the country becoming destabilized and people are starting to immigrate to the United States. The United States opens up its doors to people and readily welcome them in open arms. But then they get selective amnesia at times. We have a case of selective amnesia. Today we have Phoeun You here. He's basically a political prisoner. And Phoeun, introduce yourself to the Rattling the Bars audience and tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into the detail of your situation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And my name is Phoeun You, and after serving 26 years, I was deported to Cambodia, a country that I left since I was 1 years old. And I'm here now. I'm trying to find my way back, and I'll shed more light on how I got here and all that in a second. But thank you for allowing me this space.
Yeah, and okay, so let's start right here. Okay. You come to this country when you was 1 years old from Cambodia, and for the benefit of our viewers that don't know, uh, Cambodia, Vietnam, that whole Asian Pacific was at one point going through a war, and the United States was heavily involved in colonializing and having a imperial disposition towards both these countries. That ultimately led, in Cambodia's case, to constant regime change that ultimately led to the Cameroons taking over, and under Pol Pot, the most atrocious uh, behavior took place in terms of what later became known as the killing fields, where millions of Cambodian people, citizens, and people was killed. So your family came in the United States against that backdrop.
Yes, that is correct backdrop. And yeah, so I might as well just jump in and start
Go ahead.
explaining how it all began. So America left Cambodia after, being in war with Vietnam and neighboring countries in 75. They took off, they lost the war and left. Um, when they left, that's when chaos happened in neighboring countries like my country and other communist country where guerrilla armies kind of took over, overthrowing the government. You know what I mean? In my country, in Cambodia, the guerrillas were the Khmer Rouge. They're the one who just killed everybody to start a new life, new civilian. They wanted to implement their own rules and regulation. They wanted to wipe out everybody who's educated. You know, man, anybody who's will deem as a threat to their new regime. They killed nearly 2 million people at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we had to escape. After the war left, after war ended, they took over the country. My dad was a clinical doctor, so he was
Mm-hmm.
definitely deemed as a threat. You know what I mean?
Right.
Had he stayed, they would have saw him as, hey, he's intelligent. He can speak out against us. We're gonna have to kill him. You know what I mean? And the kids that's left behind, they would have recruited us into their military. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and what were trying to do is build a agrarian culture society, meaning
Mm,
they're
agree.
going to
Yeah.
build a country where is based in farmland. You know what I mean? Just
Right.
build a culture, feed your own community, grow the system like that. You know,
Right.
so so what we had to do was when they were coming to take over, we went to a neighboring country in Thailand to escape them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because we don't want to be killed. So I left at 1 years old, you know, and we stayed in Thailand for close to 4 years before we made it to the United States.
And
And
okay, speak on and in terms of like the United States, were your parents given green cards, or what was the relation? What was the terms of their coming to the country? Was they given given some form of legitimization?
yeah, so when America left the country, of course they were embarrassed because they lost the war. You know what I mean? And when guerrillas took over, they're like, "Hey, man, it's just like what's happening in Afghanistan when
Right.
the Taliban took over, right?" I was like, "Man, you just left and didn't help nothing. You know what I mean? You just bounced." So there's when they left behind after they lost the war, I was like, I assume, in my personal opinion, it's like, how can they redeem themselves? How could they help? You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? And they're supposed to be over there trying to play Big Brother, but instead they ran, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they found ways for us who escaping the war to get back to the United States. So they gave us what's called a permanent residence. You know what I mean? When we came to the
Mm-hmm.
United States, that was what's called is having a green card. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
allowing us to live permanently in the United States. You know, but without having the citizenship. But
Right.
we can apply for it eventually. But we're basically legally given permission to stay in America to escape war.
And then and under them terms, were your family allowed to vote in elections? Were they allowed to participate in the so-called democratic process in the United States
No, they're not allowed to do any of that until they turn citizen.
to receive citizenship? Okay, so where did y'all relocate at in the United States?
So when we came, it was 1980. We ended up in Ogden, Utah. A Mormon family took us in.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed with them for maybe, I don't know, maybe less than a year, maybe a year, you know, or so to get on our feet. And
Right.
then we continued to stay in Utah for maybe 2 to 3 more years. And then that
Right.
was it. You know, what I mean, things just for my family it's like they wanted to feel more closer to people who are like them. So
Right.
we moved to California, Long Beach, California, where they saw a little bit more people who looked like them. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And wanted to feel a little bit more connected to home as much as possible after leaving home. You know, so we
And
ended up
talk.
in Long Beach, California.
All right. Talk a little bit about your growing up in that part in California and your childhood.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but it was like a culture shock. You know what I mean? I left a country where I was born, and I felt like that's, you know what I mean, my livelihood. And then went going to a refugee camp, and then from a refugee camp went to America, which was like Utah. You know, it was majority whites, and we were the only Asian family there. And
Mm-hmm.
after that, from Utah, we went to Long Beach, California. Now it's more diverse, and the
Right.
environment looked different. You know what I mean? Now I went from a nice, clean, like mountainous scenery type of place to um, the neighborhood. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right. Right. A little
So
close
now
quarter.
I didn't see whites too much anymore. I saw Hispanics now, blacks now, a few Asians at the time. You know what I mean? So it felt like, huh, this is another culture shock. You know
Right.
what I mean? So trying to fit in to this new world, it was different. It was a straight adjustment. You know what I mean? We lived in poverty. I mean, our household was 15 people in a three-bedroom house. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my parents really struggled trying to make ends meet. We went to school and did the best we can. I didn't know we were poor. It's just that
Right.
schools and kids in school made it known, though. You know? So adjusting to life there was definitely different. There's poverty, there's gangs, there's violence, there's I mean, just the environment was just totally different, you know.
Were your family given any assistance from the United States in terms of helping them like relocate or provide any type of social service such as housing and uh, any type of economic assistance?
Yeah, I think we were on welfare, you know what I mean. So
Okay,
we receive government checks, you know,
right,
and that was how we survived. You know, and while my other brother and sister, while they were growing up, after getting away from school, I mean, after graduating from school, they also worked to try to help financially, you know.
right,
So that's how we kind of like make ends meet, you know, just from different family members chipping in here and there, and yeah, it was a struggle. It's a struggle.
So fast forward to uh, when you become a teenager and some of the problems that you had in terms of like uh, the community where you lived at and how you had to defend yourself against a lot of the problems that was taking place in your community or in that region.
I mean, just like any other neighborhoods where people were there before you, and you know what I mean, they kind of stake claim this is our neighborhood. You know what I mean? So us being the very few, you know what I mean, that just landed last in their neighborhood, we started getting picked on a little bit. You know, when growing up, and me, I gravitated towards friends who looked like me, and we were just kids in school hanging out because we can relate to one another's struggle.
Right,
But we also, at the end of the day, we also came together because it was just safer as well. You know what I mean?
right, right,
Yeah, and protection from other kids, other race. You know, and there was blacks that was there was Hispanics that was there that we got into with because yeah, we're not the biggest and we're not uh,
right,
the numbers are not there. You know what I mean? So eventually our friends turn into cliques. Cliques eventually turn into gangs. You know what I mean?
right,
So I ended up joining a gang about 13 years old because home just didn't feel like home anymore. You know what I mean? I was trying to fit in, like 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 my parents would struggle trying to provide and um, they did the best they can. You know what I mean? They love us. You know, fed us, roofed us, clothed us, and all that, and put us to school. But at the same time, they were going through their own traumas. You know what I mean? They
right,
couldn't provide for me like emotionally as a kid, while I was growing up. I needed that emotional nourishment, but they were also going
right,
through trauma of their own from war. You know,
right,
I didn't know that. You know, so me not feeling like I fit in at home was another layer for me turning to the streets as well.
right, right.
You know what I mean?
And
So
it's a known fact though. It's a known fact that social conditions in this country create an environment where people have no other choice but to like unite with their own ethnicity in order to survive. This is not uncommon like you have when Hispanics migrated from Mexico to this country. You have you got what they call Little Vietnam up in Seattle. You got Little Cuba in Little Havana down in Miami. So the problem is that was you was confronted with is not uncommon. What is uncommon, I think, is the lack of attention this country gives to when they bring people in this country. The lack of attention they give to trying to create a safe environment for them. All right, so fast forward to talk about how you winded up in prison.
yeah, so I mean, after living the gang life and all that, you know, I mean, it boils down to this, man. You know, um, just living with my own personal struggles. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, not knowing how to deal with my feelings, having low self esteem, not feeling accepted anywhere. You know what I mean? All that small pieces right there is it kind of boils into almost anger and hate that I carried around, right? I mean, combine that with like my gang mentality and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It was just bad. You know what I mean? And I thought the streets was how to live to survive and all that, and to to bring an identity for myself as well. I mean, so fast forward. I left Long Beach because we were having a lot of issues at home. You know what I mean? I mean, gangs shot up our house. You know what I mean? And my family started to feel unsafe. So they knew that you know, when I was gonna get back at these guys who shut up the house. You know what I
Right.
mean? They crossed the line. They're not supposed to touch family. At least, you know what I mean, in my mind, that was a no-no. So when that happened, I left California and eventually end up coming back. And when I came back, um, I started trying to live my own life. Went to Las Vegas and got my own place. You know, turned 18. Had a girl. I had a job. I was trying to just be a man, start a new life. You know what I mean? And eventually, that failed. My girl got pregnant. She had a miscarriage. Um, I started struggling financially. Started drinking a little bit, and 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 eventually got evicted. That's when I ended up coming back to California. I mean, when I came back, I was like, man, I already felt like a failure because I couldn't protect my girl. I couldn't, you know what I mean, be a man out there in the world and just live a life and succeed. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And to come back home, I didn't want to face my parents. Like, I didn't want them to see me as a failure, you know? So all this is like bubbling up inside, you know what I mean? And then when I came back to California, my nephew was having some issues, right? With people in school, with Hispanic kids. And he told me, hey, man, I'm getting pushed around over there. You know what I mean? And that triggered some stuff in me because I went through the same issue when I was growing up.
Right.
And he told me, hey, uh, I could just go pick you up if you don't feel safe. You know what I mean? So I went to go pick him up one day from school, waited in the school parking lot for him to come home. And he came with a friend, and we sat in the car briefly just to hang out a little bit. And right when we were ready to leave, a car comes behind us and blocks our entrance from getting out. You know what I mean? I mean, hands were thrown up. You know, when you say "What's up" in gang culture, is a threat.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? So they got out the car. There was about 6, 7 of those guys, and there was three of us. A melee happened. A riot in the parking lot happened because we were outnumbered. I felt like we lost that fight. Left bruised and battered a little bit. Um, yeah, my pride was broken. I mean, here was my opportunity to prove myself, to protect my nephew, at least save some face from what I was already going through already, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and instead, I allowed this to happen. So I was humiliated and embarrassed that this happened, and some old wounds came back because I mean I grew up I mean being pushed around myself. I mean as an immigrant kid, being the smaller one, and after we got jumped, um, in my mind I was like, man, we got to get this dude's back, man. I mean that was street code. We got to get him back, man. Dudes can't just jump us, and the only way to redeem myself was um, to get him back. And so what I wanted to do was redeem myself after we got jumped, you know. And I was like, we got to get these guys, man. I mean, that's just what I thought and what I believed at the time. Like, if somebody messes with you, you get them back.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean, that's just street code, that I live by. And a couple of days later, I got a gun and I said, man. And then I was also drinking, and I was going through my own personal stuff that I haven't figured out yet. And I asked my nephew, "Do you know who these guys are, man? You know what I mean? Because I'm ready to hit them and get them back. You know what I mean?" And we drove around and looked for these guys. And eventually, we pulled up to a group of kids, and one of the guys looked like one of the guys from the fight. So I ended up telling my nephew who was driving to pull over. Our pull the
Well, you
shot.
don't have to go. You don't have to go into a lot of detail, but
Right, right, right.
ultimately,
Ultimately, I did a drive-by shooting. One person
yeah.
was murdered and four um, got injured. And
And so, and eventually, you was arrested for this.
yeah, eventually, I mean, 8 days later, I was like, man, this is getting hot. I went on the run, and I was picked up 8 days later in Las Vegas, and I got sent back to California to fight my case. And then I've been arrested since. This happened in '95, and I spent the next 26 years incarcerated.
I went when did in trial. Did you go to trial or did you plead guilty?
I went to trial and lost, and I was sentenced
Okay.
to 35 to life.
And so you did how much time did you do prior to being deported?
Yeah, I did 25 and a half. Um, and then I did another 6 months in ICE. So it was like a
Right.
total of over 26 years, and then I got deported.
Then when you was found guilty, right? But did your attorney or did anybody from immigration nationalization or ICE come and tell you that upon the completion of your sentence that you was going to be deported? Was you
No,
made aware of that? Was you made aware of this at any time during the time that you was serving a sentence in uh,
no, no
California
lawyers.
prison?
Yeah, no lawyers has ever told me that you're facing deportation. I think
And
it was
go
somebody
ahead.
from the immigration center who paid us a visit when I started my time and said, "Hey, you have a pending ICE hold," and that was it. You know, no lawyer has told me that. A counselor from prison or somebody came and told me that. You know,
And so at the complete, so while you was incarcerated, what were some of the things that you accomplished while you was incarcerated?
yeah. So I did quite a bit of stuff. You know, I mean, at first when I started my time, it was tough. I was on a high level security yard, and there was no program happening. And then my mindset from the streets just followed. You know what I mean? Because it was no opportunities
Right, right,
to just to work on yourself, right? I mean, and I just wanted to hang out with the fellas too. I still wanted a reputation. I was still young,
right.
you know, and it wasn't until something happened to me, which was an unfortunate situation, that I received a letter from home and received the news that my sister was murdered,
Mm,
and we were locked down, and I couldn't run from these feelings. I was pissed. I was sad. I was confused. It was a hurt. And then I was angry, and all these feelings just came and hit me all at once. And like I said, I couldn't run from it. And that was the first time like I cried in years. And after all that kind of like, after 3 4 days, you're just feeling all that pain. Um, I started thinking about, damn, this must be how my mom is feeling. She's right there in the thick of things. You know what I mean? While dealing with my sister's murder. And then eventually I end up thinking about, this must be how the victim's family must also felt. You know, my pain becomes um, a seed that was planted in me.
right, right,
Think
right.
about the other side and the harm I've caused in my own act of violence. So from that day forward, you know what I mean? I didn't change didn't come right away, but
That's right. That's
it
right.
was a seed that was planted. It's like, you know what, this pain hurts, man. I don't want to do this to anybody again, you know?
Right,
Even if I never see lifers go home, I still don't want to go through that kind of pain, you know?
right.
So that began my journey of almost healing almost until and then I got transferred to a prison where program was provided, and I started getting involved. First thing I did was go to school. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? I mean, that's the most powerful thing that one can do, in my opinion, just to empower himself, like mentally. And I graduated and got my AA degree. and I started investing my time in other programs because it made me feel like the confidence that was lost at one point in time. You know what I mean? That self worth came back. You know, and
Right.
I started investing my time in other programs. Like one of the main programs that I love is Vogue, is a victim offender education group. Is a
Right.
program that helps myself like understand the root causes of my violence
Right. Right.
and what led to that, how I got there, the pain that I caused, and what I intended to do afterwards. You know what I mean? Moving forward.
Let
So
me ask you this here.
yeah,
So in terms of like, okay, so we recognize your personal growth and we recognize that, in your journey, you come to this realization that you no longer want to be used as an instrument by the system to inflict uh, harm and danger on other people. So this transition, from what I'm understanding, ultimately led you to be paroled, right?
yeah. This position and other programs. I was also a certified crisis counselor in domestic violence because of my personal um, story with my sister, and I kind of like really wanted to do something about it. So I became a crisis counselor. Um, that amongst other stuff that I've done as well, co-founded a program called Roots. It's a ethnic studies program
Right.
geared towards the API community. You know what I mean? Because at this time, for some reason, there's a big API boom in the prison system. There's no
What API stand for?
uh, um, Asian Pacific Islander.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So there was a need to help my community out, and I wanted to do that. So I helped create that program called Roots. And
Let me ask you this here.
mhm,
Okay, in terms of, because now we're at the place where you initially told when you first got locked up that you were going to, at some point in time, have a hearing before ICE. Was you given, at that point, was you given any notification as to what was going to be what they were going to be looking at, what ICE would be looking at to determine whether or not you will remain in this country or whether or not you'll be sent out? When they first notified you, was you made aware of what they would be looking at upon you seeing them, or was you only given that after you was released, after you was paroled and released to their jurisdiction?
yeah, so once they told me that, I mean, they told me that when I first got locked up. You know what I mean? First
Mm-hmm.
got arrested, and it didn't dawn on me. All it says, you have an ICE hold pending. What does that mean exactly? As
Right,
a young
exactly,
kid coming,
exactly.
I was like, what does that mean? I don't know the laws. I don't know the logistics. Even the lingo didn't even sound right. You know what I mean? So with that said, I haven't heard nothing after decades later. When I went to the parole board and this and that, and and they brought it up again and said, hey, you have ICE hold pending. This means that it's possible that if you get found suitable, you can be deported, right? So I was found suitable, and I'm waiting. You know what I mean, for the ICE people to come in and notify me, like, hey, this is the next step. Nothing happened. I waited for my time to clear to walk out the gates. You know what I mean? So I'm like full of joy and this and that. And 2 days later, 2 days before I walked out the gate, that's when the ICE agent came. Say, hey, your journey is not going to end yet. You're not going to be free yet. We're going to pick you up right when you leave out of here. So
And
yeah,
when they picked you up, okay, so when they picked you up, right? Was you what was did they ever tell you what was the reason for deporting you? Did they ever give you a reason like why you were being deported?
there is no reason. I mean, I was never given a reason. But after my own like investigation, this is my personal thoughts on it. You're not an American citizen. You broke the law. You're deportable. Period. You know what I mean? Um, and and that's how I took it. You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
what's happening.
All right. So tell people what they can do to try to help you get back into this country, because we recognize that this is one, arbitrary, two, this is inhumane, and three, you were never given, afforded the opportunity to represent yourself as to why you should remain in this country. Your case is not unusual in that the United States is using ICE arbitrarily just to send people back to their country or to a country they was birthed in but have no relationship with. Talk about what we can do to try to help you get back into this country, or what's being done to try to help you get back into this country.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have a pardon pending right now, and I'm waiting on the Governor Newsom to make a move. And this is basically what it boils down to. Like, the fabric of America is to build a strong family, so that way the strong family becomes a strong community. You know what I mean? That's the core concept of what America is built on. You know what I mean? But by separating a family member, that tears everything apart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that doesn't make sense. That contradicts their values. You know what I mean? And what I'm asking for is the opportunity for me to prove that I can make changes in the community, you know, and I have skills that I want to give back. The community is hurting. They need some healing. You know what I mean? I've walked that walk. I've talked the talk. So I'm ready to give back. I just wanted that second chance. You know what I mean? To prove myself. And I'm asking for support letters for to write to the Governor Newsom on my behalf, and to
Mm-hmm.
reach out to my Bitly. I mean, you can help out that way as well. But at the end of the day, it's like this. I really, really think that being punished like this, sent away, deported, is a lifetime punishment. You
That's
know what I
right. That's
mean?
right.
Because yeah, you sent me to a country that I don't know. I no longer speak the language. Um, Everything is a uphill climb. When you've already told me that I'm fit to live in your society again.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm asking for you to give me a second chance. I know I can make a difference in the community if given the chance.
There you have it. The
Mhm.
real news about Pun Yo, a political prisoner, unlike anybody else, defending itself in a society where this country throw immigrants from other countries into a society to fend for themselves. And when they fend for themselves and defend themselves and wind up in some of the most odious situations, they're then punished again. He's been punished. He's been triply punished. He served his sentence and did some remarkable things while he was incarcerated, made some valuable contributions to his community while incarcerated, only to find that upon his release, when he thought he was coming home, not giving any notice that he would give a hearing as to defend himself. He wasn't given this opportunity to defend himself. He was just deported back to Cambodia because his only crime is he wasn't nationalized as a United States citizen. That's his only crime. His crime is not the crime that he committed. If he was nationalized as a United States citizen, he'd be walking the streets of California right now. But because he's not nationalized, and more importantly, the reason why he was in this country is because this country waged an imperialist war in Asia that destabilized the country that he was born and raised in, or rather born in. Thank you, Yo, for giving us this enlightening interview, and we definitely will be keeping in touch with you and following up on uh, the progress that's being made. And you can always reach out to us.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
yeah. Thank you, Mansa, for giving me this opportunity to just tell my story, and hopefully this makes a difference. Maybe in future policy change, maybe it will help me get back home.
We
Thank you
looking
so much.
forward to We're looking forward to seeing you back home. And this is, in fact, your home. There you have it, the real news and Rattling the Bars. We ask our viewers and listeners to continue to support the real news and Rattling the Bars. You can go to our website on how you can make your contributions. We bring you the real news. Now, no one is bringing you no news about the immigration policies that exist that got you sent out this country. No one is really looking at ICE. No one is looking at immigration nationalization from the perspective that we're offering. So we ask that you continue to support so you can continue to get the real news. Thank you very much.
Thank you.